Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas. But who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Rhonda Clark, thank you so much for being here on This Town OKC.
You're very welcome. Happy to be here.
It's about time I got you in here, since you're the executive artistic director here of Carpenter Square Theatre, sponsor of the This Town OKC podcast, because you let me store the gear in the rehearsal studio.
That's a good sponsorship.
All right, so this is oral history time.
Okay.
So tell me your story. I know a little bit. You've told me over the years, but I want to hear you tell your story. Where are you from?
Okay. Well, I grew up in a small town in the Ozarks, Aurora, Missouri, this is my spiel, 25 miles from Springfield, 50 miles from Joplin, and about 45 miles from Branson. So there I am in Aurora, Missouri, growing up, where there was very little theater. The high school did do some plays. In fact, I was completely smitten. I don't know how or why I ended up there, but I went to a production of Our Town at the high school. And I remember the spotlight in the back that hit Emily walking down the aisle for the wedding scene in Our Town. I remember that very distinctly. I was probably in junior high, maybe younger, I don't know. But anyway, no community theater. After I left to go to college, they did have a community theater for a few years in the old Catholic church in town. But anyway,
Aurora.
In Aurora, yeah. I went off to college in Miami, Oklahoma.
Oh, boy.
I didn't want to go. If I went anywhere near Aurora, I would have been expected to commute. And I didn't want to do that. And I knew that that wasn't good or easy for a theater major. I knew that. And my high school speech and drama teacher and debate teacher, I did a lot of that in high school. I was a debater, even my freshman year of college. But anyway.
So before you get to college, did you do much theater in high school?
I did. In fact, I was Wendy in Peter Pan.
Oh, boy.
And I got stoned, not that kind of stoned, in, oh my gosh, what's the name of the play?
The Crucible?
No. It'll come to me sometime after this is all over. And oh, yeah, I did several things. In fact, my first directing gig, I was assistant director for The Curious Savage when I was a senior. But anyway, I was smitten, and up until my sophomore year of high school, I'd planned on something to do with medicine. Not necessarily a doctor, but maybe. And then it was like, no, it will not be that. I'm going to do theater. And I had, I was a good student, and I had teachers, especially my Algebra 3 / calculus teacher, take me aside one day and say, Rhonda, I hear you're going to major in drama in college. I really don't think you should waste your whatever, your intellect, that you should waste your time doing that when you could do, something else. And I said, well, my mind's made up and I've got some scholarships and I'm going to be doing that. But thank you for your concern. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I went off to Miami, Oklahoma, to NEO A&M, which at that time was a junior college and is now a four-year college. And at that time, my high school drama teacher that I had mentioned earlier, he knew about the program there and knew they had a great facility. And they did. In fact, the same man who designed Rupel Jones at OU, Rupel Jones Fine Arts Center, I think it's called something else now.
Yeah.
But most of us know it as Rupel Jones, designed the facility on the campus there. So they had a great facility, and Randall White's dad and uncle were professors of mine. For those out there who might remember, we knew him as Randy, but he's Randall now. He lives down in Dallas, Fort Worth. Anyway, his dad was head of the department, Cheryl White, and his uncle, Bob White, was another professor in the department and taught classes, and Cheryl directed. And I did a lot of shows at NEO, both straight plays and musicals. I didn't do any musicals after college. Although, I sang all through high school, and I even took voice in college, but I've decided this is not for me. It's not, I don't love it enough to stay with it. So anyway, but I enjoyed, oh my gosh, and made lifelong friends there. In fact, I was put in the dorm with someone who I knew nothing about. It was just, the luck of the draw. And we are still friends. We still text and talk. And when she moved back and lived for a while in Tulsa, I stayed with her a couple times, she and her husband. So we're still very close as you can be, not living in the same state.
Right.
But I had made all these friends at NEO, and I I was an orphan, so I established my citizenship in Oklahoma so I could get in-state tuition to stay, and because my freshman year, I think I paid out-of-state tuition, and then I established Oklahoma citizenship, got my driver's license, all that kind of stuff, because I'd made such good friends, and we were planning to go on to OU. And my college roommate was in the journalism school, and I was in the fine arts department. But those were really good times. And the first time I ever performed on what was known as the Tolbert stage, when the building flooded and closed, was when I was at NEO. And Stage Center, as we knew it in the later years, would host the American College Theater Festival.
Yes.
And we brought a show, The Effects of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds. I got the cat from the ASPCA. That was my little character. But that was the first time I performed on that stage. So I was very familiar with that building from 1975 onward until the place closed down forever. And anyway, went on to OU, got scholarships, and they had special scholarships. I really depended on scholarships. And there was government money at that time for both when I was in junior college and at OU. And I was poor as a church mouse, but I made it through college without ever having a job.
Nice.
I was able to, my
focus on your art.
Yes, yeah. That was fantastic. And I did have relatives that had were still taking care of me in a way, insurance and all that good stuff. And I appreciate the Tates very, very much. Cousins who I lived with until I went off to college, from the time I was 10 until I went off to college. And anyway, there I was at OU. As a transfer student at that time, I went to get my season ticket for the football games. Well, as a transfer student, my seniority for tickets was equal to freshman. So my ticket was down in the south end zone. No, excuse me, the north end zone, with all the freshmen who got blazing drunk and were throwing up all around me. And I was like, this really isn't for me. So I went to one OU game while I was at OU and haven't been since. So nothing against it, but, that one was enough for me.
I've lived in this town for over 50 years, and I've never been to an OU game.
Oh, wow.
Even married to the roughneck queen from the game of the century, and still haven't been to
I'm surprised. I'm shocked, actually.
I have no interest.
Yeah. And I have a lot of friends. In fact, for those of you out there who might know Lily Bassett from performing, Lily was someone that I met at OU. And in my last production at OU, Lily was my mother in The Woman Who Was Believed Dead, which was a graduate thesis project. It was based on scenarios from Commedia dell'arte. And, I was the ingenue. It had all of the stock Commedia characters, El Capitan, and the list goes on. And I didn't do a lot of shows at OU, but I stayed busy. And by that time, I was also taking directing classes. So besides acting, I was also, when you're taking directing classes, at least at that time, we're talking 1977, 78, you directed one act. Every Wednesday in Old Science Hall, we produced one acts that were student directed. And there were always 2 one acts on the bill. And so, and Mr. Suggs, for those who might know that name, Charlie Suggs, he was still teaching at that time. He was very disappointed. I mean, my first play that I directed was a Tennessee Williams, This Property is Condemned. I mean, the first play I directed at OU. And that was just fine with him. And then for my second show, I selected a Sam Shepard, Icarus's mother, and he was not pleased. He did not care whatsoever for Sam Shepard. I'll just say he hated Sam Shepard. I don't think he understood the mindset of that playwright. And so he hated that. So I didn't get an A on that show. I got a B+ or something. I don't remember.
He showed you who was boss.
Exactly. Don't pick that scummy material. But anyway, again, lifelong friends from OU, and got what was really great at that time. We had professors, acting coaches and directing professors and history professors that gave us a taste of a lot of different styles to use and to select from for acting and for directing. I mean, we had Alan Langdon, who was very much method. You know, his background was with his mentor was an Russian teacher. We had Charlie Suggs, who was great with styles. My first farce was actually a scene from A Flea in Her Ear. Fado was in his acting class. And his acting class, you really did learn styles. And so I ate that up, even though it was not realistic in many ways. I loved learning that style. We also had David Rainier, who was amazing with play structure and analysis and theater history. I mean, great. In fact, our textbook, his name was in our Oscar G. Brockett theater history textbook because he was one of the grad students who had worked for and contributed to that textbook. I really enjoyed the diverse styles that we learned while I was there. I have to say, I really don't know what the School of Drama is like right now. I'm not sure I know any of the professors there now. I did for a long time, but not recently. But it was a great time to be there.
My experience has been that a lot of university theater programs don't, or rather actively discourage their students from working in any theater outside of the university. They want to keep it real tight.
That's very true.
And was that true for you as well?
Yes, that was true then. There wasn't
Seems to be true now, too.
There wasn't a lot in Norman at that time. I think there was a fledgling community theater because they had started refurbishing the Sooner Theater, which is going strong today. But in the 70s, it needed a lot of work. And anyway, so there wasn't a lot outside the theater. Street Players Theater had sprung up.
Right.
Oh,
and they played at Town Tavern an awful lot.
Yes, they performed at Town Tavern for sure. And they also performed in another spot but it was all on Campus Corner. Now, in junior college, Miami did have a community theater, and I did not perform there, but I went to see my acting, and he also directed me several times, perform there in, what's the musical with Pseudolus and...
Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
And Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. He was performing in that, and I went to see it, and it was in some, horrible venue. I don't know if it was like a church social hall or I can't remember, but I remember the low ceilings and the minimal set. But I thought it was great that there was community theater happening because Miami is a small town. I don't know how big it is now, but it was definitely a small town back then. So anyway, then all during college, between NEO, A&M, and OU, I was going to Southeast Theater Conference to audition. And at that time, I'm not sure today, but at that time, a lot of, especially summer theater companies would come, and it was cattle call, and you would get called back and hopefully hired. And I did get called back by a few places and was kind of fascinated. I'd done Shakespeare in college, and I can't say that I'm still so fascinated. I got Shakespeare out of my system because I did 3 summers of Shakespeare and period drama or period comedy in Odessa, Texas.
Oh, boy.
The globe of the great Southwest, or as we endearingly call it, the glob. And on the campus there, I don't remember the name of the college, but on a remote corner of the campus, there was a replica of the Globe Theater in London. So we had that same, we had seats. We didn't expect the audience to stand and buy oranges from a seller passing by. But it was it was really a great experience because everyone who was hired for the company played large roles and a small role, then maybe did tech on a show. And all of us had behind the scenes assignments. And because I did know how to sew, I worked in the costume shop all the time and stage managed and acted in several shows because we would do 3 to 4 shows in repertory every summer. That was one of my many associations with A Midsummer Night's Dream.
You have told me some stories about the days off from that job.
Yes. Well, once we got everything up and running, because it was rep, so you get a show open and you're rehearsing the next show, and then those 2 shows have a schedule where the next one perform.
They alternate.
There you go. They alternate. And then the 3rd show, and then the 4th show. So once we would get all 4 shows up, we were free from Sunday at 5 o'clock at the latest. Our matinee started at 2. So from Sunday at 5 until, trying to remember if we had Wednesday night performances or just Thursday.
Had a few days.
Several days. Well, everywhere in Texas is 6 hours.
Yes.
I mean, it's 6 hours from Odessa, at that time especially, because we had Nixon low mileage. You're supposed to drive 55. Ha ha. And so it was 6 hours to Dallas. It was 6 hours to Lubbock. Maybe not quite 6 hours, but it was far to Lubbock. It was 6 hours to San Antonio and Juarez, and it was 6 hours to New Mexico. I mean, so we would have it all planned, and we would take off after the show on Sunday, and not everybody had a car because some people had come in from Florida or West Virginia or wherever. Some people were from Texas, but I had a car. I had my 68 Dodge Dart. And we would take off in my car, 4 to 5 of us in that car. And we had fun. That was my first time in Mexico. And oh gosh, because it was a Shakespeare company, all of the guys had long to longish hair. So I made the mistake of driving my car across the bridge into Juarez. And of course, before we were going to head back, we got pulled over and the car was searched. And we were biting our nails over that. And I won't say why, but anyway, we were. And they were taking the panels off the door. They were looking.
Wow.
They were expecting that we had made a drug buy. That was scary. We hadn't. But I will say the daiquiris, that's what I would get in Juarez. The daiquiris were quite good in Juarez. But we also, we had fun in White Sands in New Mexico, and then went up into the mountains. That's the first time I ever started out, because I don't remember the air conditioning being very good in that 68 Dodge Dart. So we started out the day so hot in that car, but by the afternoon, we were up in the mountains in New Mexico and freezing because we hadn't really packed for the mountains.
Sure.
And it's so hot. One thing I remember about Odessa as a place is that because it was so incredibly dry, everyone likes to talk about how much better dry heat that is than our humid heat. Well, maybe. I don't think so much. But anyway, it was so dry there. I had waist-length hair, and I could jump in the shower, get in the car, and drive to the theater, which was literally 5 minutes away. And my hair would be, my waist-length hair would be completely dry by the time I got there. And I remember the first time that we really had in August, because the season would go into August. August is the rainy season there. It really is the desert. And on the way to the theater, I was so worried because water was coming in onto my floorboards.
Ooh.
I mean, the streets were flooding, and people were like, don't worry about it. And then after the show that night, I remember walking out the stage door and going, what happened to the water? Well, the ground had huge cracks in it. I mean, the place is so dry. But I was astonished at that. Was not used to that at all. And I will say one of the best things about working in Odessa, besides the plays, there's a meteor crater about 15 miles away, as I recall. Maybe didn't take long to get there. And it was wonderful after a show to drive out to the meteor crater, take a blanket or whatever, lay back in the middle of the meteor crater, and look at the sky. I think that's the first time I got fascinated by the sky and the moon and stars and all of that. It was so funny. I said, let's see how many falling stars we can count. Well, I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating at all. Within 5 minutes, I'd gotten up to 100, and I was like, this is crazy. I mean, I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, it's amazing what's going on in the sky that our light pollution, just cancels out. But I loved that. And, the only other alternative is to go to a bar after a performance and have drinks, and that was much nicer than hanging out. I mean, we did that too.
Yeah, right.
But it was much nicer to go to the meteor crater.
So after the Odessa gig wraps up?
Well, I guess it was after my senior year at OU. I was back at Southeast Theater Conference, and I got hired by a new theater group that was based out of Paducah, Kentucky. Little did I know how unfunded, how new this theater group was. But it was a fun gig. It was at a resort. Well, the resort was really an aging place that was looking for something to possibly bring in
and revitalize the business.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one place that I remember performing for 2 people. And this is why we performed for 2 people. It was this couple's anniversary. And it was like a dinner theater situation. So they'd come there on their anniversary. And there were 6 of us in the play. There were 3 different scenes set in a hotel room, kind of like
Plaza Suite.
Exactly. Yeah, and my act, we were newlyweds. Jerry Neal, we're Facebook friends. We're still Facebook friends. Anyway, and we played newlyweds in that scene. And anyway, we all talked. I'm like, really? Two people? Well, it's their anniversary. So we went ahead. That was tough, but they were so appreciative.
I'm sure.
And we went out to chat with them after the show, and oh my gosh, they felt so special. I mean, it was a command performance.
Yeah, exactly.
For
yes.
that. But that's what brought me back to Oklahoma, is that the theater folded, ran out of money before the season was going to end. I mean, it was a summer gig, but we didn't get our last 2 paychecks. The first time we didn't get a paycheck, it was like, oh, okay, well, all right, we can deal with that. Second time, it was like, we're all out of here. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I called this friend, Lynn, who I talked about that I'd stayed in touch with. And we were first dorm roommates at NEO. She still lived in Norman, and I told her what had happened. And she said, well, come back, come here to Norman. She was living in a garage apartment near the university. So I slept on the...
Did you get the couch or the floor?
I got the floor for a while. And if you need it, I'll help you get a job where I'm working. And she was working at a steakhouse in Norman. So that's kind of how I ended up back. And I'm not sure how I found out. I started calling around, and there was a job opening of sorts at Oklahoma Theater Center. It was a CETA job, which is a government-supported program where...
it was, I think, Comprehensive Employment Training Act or something like that.
Yeah. And half of my very small salary was paid by CETA, and the other half was paid by the theater center. And so I became an administrative assistant at the theater center. But I loved it because I was working at a theater, And what was really unusual about the job, and I really appreciate it and have looking back, is that I don't think it was Monday, I think it was Tuesday. No, it was Monday at 10 o'clock. They would have a staff meeting, and they would bid for my time. So sometimes I would be working with the education director, making cold calls for potential students, or helping with mailings or materials for classes. And Ron Martin, that's where I met Ron Martin. He was the box office manager, and he bid for my time for every afternoon of the week. So we ended up spending at least 2 hours, sometimes 3 or 4, every afternoon in the box office together. And sometimes I got to work in the costume shop. And a couple times, not many, I got to work with the lighting people and go up and be a model for focusing lights or helping focus lights, that sort of thing. So it was a great time. It really was. And then halfway through that season, their house manager quit to kind of focus on a photography business. And so I was house managing. So I got to see many performances of the shows that they were doing at that time, working with volunteers and managing the concessions, and it so prepared me for what I do at Carpenter Square. But anyway, it was a great time. It really, really was. And then from there, got connected with a performing arts group that became affiliated with the State Arts Council's Artist in Residence program. And there were 4 of us, 2 men, 2 women, who toured the state.
Was that the Zany Arts Players?
No, TNT players, trunk and trailer, TNT players. And we would go in, because there were 4 of us, we would go in to a school for a week, and we would perform on the first day, and then we would split up and do classes, at the school the rest of the time. And, there were different people that I worked with. Pat French founded the company, so she was always there. But that's where the second or third year, Woody, if anyone remembers Robert Woods, Woody.
Oh, yeah.
Who's now deceased. That's where I first worked with him. And we would go at each other because he would, he liked to throw trash out the car window or whatever. And I would just be, what? I was brought up in that era of no litter. I mean, I remember the first Earth Day.
Yes.
And I was out there picking up trash in the ditches because we lived on the north edge of town, a little 2-lane highway. And I was out there picking up trash in the ditch on Earth Day. So that was, but that's the joy of touring, meeting all the personalities and having to work with different people.
How many years did were you with the TNT player?
3 or 4. And it was around that time that we formed, I guess just 3. And it was around that time that we formed the Zany Arts Players with Doobie Potter and Joe Long. I met them very shortly after they moved to Norman from the mime school in Spring Green, Wisconsin. And having performed in Commedia dell'arte in college, I was really aware of what they were talking about when they said, well, let's perform in that style. And so we performed with half masks, and we each had a stock character. And I found some folk tales that had already been adapted or we adapted into short plays. So in any performance we did, we would usually do 3 short plays, 3 playlets. We had, there was one that was longer. So sometimes there would be 2, but most of the time we would have 3 short plays. And we toured Oklahoma City parks and Oklahoma City and Metro library system, doing 10 shows a week.
Wow.
We would start out with the libraries, and then the last week or 2 would be parks. And because this was so fun, but crazy, Doobie had inherited her dad's old Chevy pickup. I think it was a 52 Chevy pickup. And we turned that into our touring stage. We drove that from place to place. Joe mainly, but we helped, built a stage on the back because that style of pickup has the high sides and the big wheel wells on the outside.
Right.
And so we had a lot of storage underneath the stage. Once we would open the back, we could stuff things in there that we needed, like we had a bench and parachutes and different things. And we also put a platform on top of the cab as another playing area. And when Joe got up there, he seemed incredibly tall.
Yeah.
Because we would perform outdoors. I could do that then. in the summer, in June and July, we were performing outdoors. Now, there would be certain days that we didn't want to torture the children. So, so we would perform inside the library. But most of the time we were performing out by a tree or whatever on the lawn of a library. Did that for several years. And even when we weren't participating with libraries and metro parks, we would tour out. Like one time we went to Kansas and we would go around the state, Lawton and various places around the state, and did that for several years until it got to the point that we just couldn't hold up physically. I remember one time we were performing on the water stage in
the Myriad Gardens.
In the Myriad Gardens in downtown Oklahoma City. And we were performing, it was 4th of July weekend. And because there were going to be fireworks, they wanted us to start earlier than usual. Like our show was going to be that long. I mean, it was definitely less than an hour long. It's about 45, 50 minutes. So they wanted us to start at 7 instead of 8 o'clock, our usual start time. Well, at 7, that stage has been baking in the sun. And that was the first time I saw stars and just had to sit down on the stage so I wouldn't fall down. And it was so funny because we were so used to improvising and whatever. You can see this. I mean, the audience won't be able to see this, but they were just acting away and they were like, oh, you're down there now.
They're looking around and they find you sitting down.
Uh-huh. And then it wasn't just me. Then later on in the show, it was Doobie. And by that time, I had recovered enough. And so we were acting around her, recovering. But that is when heat, I can't, it really did a number on me. And I can't take the heat the way I did when I was even younger than that. Yeah, it was special times, but we had such a great time. And Doobie and I worked in 3 different troupes together. We did Zany Arts Players. And when it was the centennial of the Land Run, the City Arts Council, Lynn Maroney was there at that time. And she thought there needed to be more celebration and more whatever. So they sponsored a group of us, and Doobie Potter and Al Bostick, and oh my gosh, he's now deceased. Oh, that's terrible. But there were about 6 of us. Actually, there are 2 people in that troupe that are now deceased. Whoa, okay. We toured for several months for the centennial of the Land Run. And that, besides working in Oklahoma schools and needing to learn more about Oklahoma, working on an original show for that troupe, I had to learn a lot more about Oklahoma history because I was very confused by the idea of a land run. We didn't have that in Missouri.
Right.
Yeah. And so having to figure all of that out and try and understand those land runs and how it worked and all of that. So anyway, by that time I was really settled into Oklahoma City, doing a lot of work at the theater center, performing a lot. And that's the first place. Ira was his name. Ira and Michael Jones was there at that time, for those people who might know Michael Jones, who later worked with City Rep a lot. That's the first place that let me direct. I produced a show on my own in the arena and got the wherewithal, got the set pieces together and cast it and performed it. And Al Bostick was in that show too, and Steve Vann, And James, who hasn't lived here for years, he's out in Colorado. But anyway, it was a 3-man show. So that was the first time I directed a show locally. I just said, well, I'll do it myself. But of course, it was wonderful that they let us use the facility because they were very familiar with me. And I'd been performing and working with the theater center at that time. And we'd had great success with a play called Lone Star that we took to Theater Festival and ended up in Monaco with the play, performing at the Princess Grace Theater. So anyway, I was definitely ingrained into Oklahoma City theater. And then Carpenter Square Theatre formed.
Thank you, Rhonda Clark, for being on This Town OKC podcast, telling us about your early days in theater. We're going to continue this with your Carpenter Square days.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, This Town OKC, sponsored by Carpenter Square Theatre, edited by Fred O. Bishop. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. This has been a Lippert Media production.